Hey, welcome back. I'm the Book Guy, and I'm here today to talk about Eragon and the Inheritance cycle. Now, like many of you, I grew up reading Eragon, only to fall out of love with it later, and even become one of its many critics. But the publication of the new Alagaësian novel, Murtagh, forced me to stop and reevaluate the series years later. I reread all 4 books just recently in preparation to read Murtagh. To be honest, I found the series to be much better, and in some ways much worse than I remembered. But ultimately, I'm making this video because I want to celebrate this series. The Inheritance cycle has sold 41 million copies, and brought so many new readers to the fantasy genre, including me. The Eragon phenomenon was huge back in the early 2000s, and public opinion has changed several times regarding the series. Eragon is now over 20 years old, and it's been nearly 1 year since Murtagh was released. Plus, Paolini has plans for even more books in this series. So let's talk about all things Alagaësia, in the past, the present, and the future. My big question is, are the books still worth reading today? And how does the new book Murtagh hold up? A quick note before we begin. Normally my videos are like 99% spoiler free, but today I intend to very thoroughly spoil book 1. You'll see why in just a minute. But I'll keep the rest spoiler free. Let's go! Look, we all know the concept for this one, but let's just touch on it quickly. The evil Emperor Galbatorix killed all the dragon riders, and now he's the only rider left ruling the world with a ton of magical power behind him. The elf princess Arya steals a dragon's egg from the Emperor, and magically teleports it away from him to the farthest corner of the world. There it is found by the fantasy archetype, the boy on a farm, Eragon. Lo and behold, the egg hatches and he becomes the first new dragon rider in 100 years, destined to challenge the evil emperor and attempt to save the world from his tyranny. Now let's discuss the first elephant in the room. You cannot discuss Eragon for 2 seconds without someone breaking into your living quarters and just shouting, "He was only 15! Yes, Christopher started writing Eragon at age 15 and published it when he was 16, and that's pretty damn young. Now, I remember a lot of people at the time were telling me, oh, that's just because he had rich parents, and they published it for him, but that's not the whole truth. The Paolinis had a small indie printing press, and yes, they did self-publish Eragon, but with minimal to no success. Christopher then started traveling the country and doing book launches and book signings and author interview events. He actually did 135 of these public events. That's a huge number. That's like a full-time job of just doing promotional work. Christopher even said this about the experience. I would stand behind a table in costume, talking all day without a break, and would sell maybe 40 books in 8 hours if I did really well. It was a very stressful experience. I couldn't have gone on for much longer. This continued until he was discovered. The author Carl Hiaasen, I think that's how it's pronounced, saw one of these events, and his stepson bought a copy of Eragon. When his stepson loved the book, Carl read it himself and then recommended it to his publisher. That's when the publisher called up the Paolinis to offer a traditional publishing contract. They gave the book one more edit, drew a new cover, this cover, and then re-released it traditionally. I mention this because there is a huge myth still prevalent to this day that Paolini was just a nepo baby and his parents did it all for him. But credit where credit's due. His parents did give him some assistance with self-publishing, but he also did the hard yards writing the book and that marathon of marketing events. It's definitely not a case of his parents did it for him. I do believe he deserves the level of success he's had. It's also important to remember, when Eragon first came out and people read it, it got pretty mixed to negative reviews. The critics were not kind at all. While many said, yeah, it's good for a teenager, most said it was very derivative and stereotypical of fantasy, calling it a cross between Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and offering very little new content. Worse things than that were said too. Christopher bore this criticism and kept writing. He didn't let the critics stop him, and that shows more bravery than I think is often appreciated. It is hard to keep making content in the face of criticism. I mean, I don't get a lot of criticism personally on my channel. I'd say maybe 2 to 5% of my comments are critical, and that will depend on the video. But even that little criticism can still find a way to end up getting talked about in my therapy sessions.
And I have my therapist, who I see 15 times a week.
But I'm also an adult with good mental health and pretty good coping mechanisms. Christopher faced a lot worse criticism, and he got an absolute onslaught of it while he was still a teenager. But he kept going, and that shows real strength of character. Not only did he just keep writing, he also kept improving his writing. Each of his books is a little better than the last. This is the heart of the matter. You know the saying, judge a book by its cover? And yes, people absolutely do that. Well, even more so, people will judge an author by their first book. If they don't like book 1, they very rarely read more than that. And let me tell you something, guys, too. The first book you ever write will always be the worst book you write. In many ways, it's almost unfortunate that Christopher's first book was published, so that his worst ever writing will be forever immortalized. I'm very grateful no one ever saw the first book I ever wrote, because yes, I wrote a book when I was 13, and it was terrible. My teenage first book was about terrorists invading my school, and then me and my friends fighting back with bazookas and Gatling guns, and a whole bunch of physics-defying action scenes. I mean, it was fun to write, and technically it was literature reflective of the post-9/11 global political landscape, but thank God no one ever saw it. Christopher was not so lucky, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
You'll find that most of the authors you love wrote multiple books before they got one published, because books take practice. I think the quality of his writing improved significantly over the course of this series, from books 1 to book 4, and that's the mark of a good author. Not that they never make mistakes, but that they learn from them and improve. Here's the truth, many authors never improve their writing. Each book is more or less the same level of quality, and some authors actually get worse with each passing book. But good authors are the ones who are improving and growing, and Christopher Paolini is a damn good author. Now that we've established that, let's mercilessly criticize the absolute crap out of Eragon. Eragon is a very familiar, trope-heavy story. So just how tropey are we talking about here? Well, I'm going to show you through a very elaborate piece of video editing. You see, Eragon is beat for beat the exact same story as Star Wars: A New Hope, with only a few minor differences. Brace yourself, guys. This is going to be rough. Eragon starts where a group of rebels are fleeing the Empire. Yes, they're called rebels, and it's called the Empire. The rebels are being led by the princess, and she is being chased by the Empire's greatest servant, Darth Durza, a villain second only in power to the Emperor himself. When the princess is captured, she takes the magical MacGuffin and sends it away through the use of sufficiently advanced technology. That's where the MacGuffin is discovered by a boy on a farm. And that was only the prologue. We're just getting started here. Boy on the farm is an orphan who lives with his uncle and cousin. Here we have our first difference. Roran is his cousin, not his aunt. Yay, big difference. Now, Eragon realizes his magical MacGuffin is not just an inanimate object, it's actually a living creature. A non-human sentient life form. A dragon. Yes, his non-human sentient life form companion is sassy, full of attitude, and blue. Eragon is concerned, so he decides to go speak with that strange kooky old guy who lives nearby, Obi Brom Kenobi. Brom tells him stories of the old magical champions who used to fight for truth and justice until they were destroyed by the Empire. Plot twist, Brom used to be one of these very wizards. At this point, the Empire arrives and attacks Eragon's home, and his uncle is killed by being burnt to death. Yes, I'm not even kidding, it's that specific. Death by fire. Like, the parallels here are nuts. Anyway, difference number 2 is that Roran survives. I count that as a difference. Eragon, Brom, and his non-human sentient companion journey across the world to go find the rebels, learning about magic as they travel. Another difference here, Eragon meets a witch and her werecat, who give him prophecies that actually predict every major story point in the rest of the series. That's pretty cool. Our heroes then meet the dashing rogue, Murtagh, and his non-human ally, his horse. Yeah, I know it's a horse, but damn it, it's the same thing. The horse is Chewbacca, and I'll fight you on this. Our group realizes they need to save the princess from the beginning of the story. Also, side note, the princess has a 4-letter name, and 3 of those letters are functionally vowels. Like, that's just oddly specific, isn't it?
Yeah, don't read too much into it.
Anyway, before the group can rescue the princess, they are attacked by the Empire and Obi-Brom dies. This is another difference, as the mentor character dies before the princess rescue, not during. Boy on the Farm, Rogue, and their non-human allies go rescue the princess successfully, then finally travel to meet the rebels. Unfortunately, they also led the Empire right to the rebel base. Here we have 2 differences. The rebels are not a unified force, they are internal politics. Yay! Politics.
Oh no, I'm not brave enough for politics.
The second difference is that Murtagh is revealed to be the son of one of the Empire's servants, so everyone mistrusts him. That's original. The Empire attacks the rebel base, and the boy on the farm joins in the fight. The Empire's greatest servant from the beginning is there again, Darth Durza, and it looks like he's about to kill our hero. But at the last second, the princess comes flying in. Another difference is the princess, not the rogue. The princess blows up a nearby thing to distract the enemy, and frees up our hero to deliver the death blow. Lo, the day is saved, and our heroes rejoice. Yeah. Oof. In fantasy and science fiction, people are very unforgiving if stories are too similar. Meanwhile, crime and romance are pretty similar all the time. But the question is, if Eragon is so derivative, does that automatically make it bad? And I would say, not exactly. It may surprise you to learn that Star Wars itself is derivative. It was largely inspired by the 1958 Japanese film, The Hidden Fortress, by legendary director Akira Kurosawa. That's the story of 2 peasants who have to transport 2 VIPs across a war-torn country. The peasants are the droids and the VIPs are everyone else. George Lucas admitted many times that Star Wars is largely based off this film. And fun fact, that Japanese director Kurosawa tried to make Hollywood films, but no one respected him. But after the success of Star Wars, George Lucas met Kurosawa, his hero, and personally vouched for him to the studios, giving him the chance to make several Hollywood films. Kurosawa went on to make the Western films like 1985's Ran, which earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Director. How cool is that? But my point here is that art inspires art. Hidden Fortress inspired Star Wars, inspired Eragon, inspired Songs of Chaos by the amazing Michael R. Miller. Just like Lord of the Rings inspired Sword of Shannara, inspired The Wheel of Time, inspired the Cosmere, etc.
And so on and so forth.
Stories naturally bleed into each other in a never-ending cycle. Now, the quality of work can suffer if a story is too derivative, like The Sword of Truth, which just shamelessly ripped off Wheel of Time. But a little overlap is quite natural and kinda to be expected. A lot of new authors try really hard to make their books 100% original, just in case it's too similar to something else, and then it ends up just being a weird story. But even if it is similar, it's really not that big a deal.
So nobody cares.
In many ways, I think Eragon's success is largely due to the fact that it tells a familiar story. The hero's journey story trope works for good reason. People like these stories. I would go so far as to argue that Christopher was able to write his first book so early in his life because he had the blueprints to work off. From a plot perspective, his first book is quite strong. It flows, it all fits together, and the correct story beats are all in the right place. In fact, book 2 is where he stopped using that formula, and it kinda shows. I have been saying this for years, and now that I've read the series again recently, I'm more convinced than ever Book 2, Eldest, is by far the worst in the series. Feel free to disagree with me, of course. I think the first book works so well because it had that formula to follow. Book 2 largely moves away from copying the Star Wars formula. There is still some similarity. Our boy on the farm leaves the rebels to go and train with an old master, and then comes back for the final fight where he learns a devastating truth about his parentage. That plotline, yes, does have similar story beats, but the rest of the book is largely original. It's clear that this is the book where Christopher learned how to write his own plotlines and clearly needed more practice. Eldest spends an inordinate amount of time world building. There's a scene where Eragon visits some dwarves. Literally nothing happens in the plot for ages, while he just learns endless exposition about dwarven culture, language, religion, history, tribes, and politics. The worst part is that most of this information, is never relevant or mentioned ever again. There's a segment where Eragon learns the names of all the dwarven gods, and it's just a long list of hard-to-pronounce fantasy names that don't really correlate to any one person or thing in the mind of the reader. So Book 2 does a lot of world building, but a lot of it is just world building for the sake of world building. The strengths of this book is that we get a plotline around Roran leading the original villagers in a growing fight with the Empire, and the leader of the rebels, Nasawada, is managing rebel politics and trying to keep the rebellion alive. While these two plots are pretty predictable and straightforward, they're also interesting. They are the seeds of the quality to come. These two books are such a significant jump up in the quality of writing. In fact, that's why I'm glad that the bigger books here are the two better ones and the smaller ones are the less good ones. It's just a happy coincidence. That's how I found them. When I reread this series, I started doing it out of academic interest. And yes, I was doing it to research for a YouTube video. But reading these two books genuinely became fun. I mean, they're still flimsy in parts, but they deserve to stand shoulder to shoulder with any other fantasy book out there. These two books make me wish that the whole series had been done to this quality. The second half of the series sees a much more active conflict across the board. We see military campaigns and political alliances, rights of successions and challenges for the throne, and great development of magical powers. We also see much more nuanced character arcs, and better character writing as well. These two books have a lot of heart. As I said, they are still flaws, and there are times when they still feel juvenile. Some of the action scenes are perhaps a little cartoonish, but you can tell how much the writing has matured by this point. There's one other thing I should mention. Remember how Eragon gets those prophecies in Book 1 from Angela the Witch and the Werecat? Well, I was shocked when I reread the series again and read those prophecies and realized that they literally reveal every single major plot point for the rest of the series. It was genuinely a jaw-dropping moment. It's real. Christopher genuinely did plan out the rest of the story even while working on Book 1. That part of the story really holds up on rereads and is impressive writing. Alagaësia is a pretty generic fantasy world at first. You have your fantasy races of the humans, elves, dwarves, dragons, and urgles, and they behave pretty much as you would expect. You have pretty standard fantasy terrain, mountains, forests, etc. However, there are two things that really make this world genuinely unique: the magic and the languages. At first glance, the magic of knowing something's true name is pretty derivative. I mean, Ursula Le Guin did it in Earthsea first and best. But it's explored to such great depth in Eragon that it actually becomes original over time, with so many new ideas and layers added to this magic system, and several surprises too. Also, this magic system is heavily focused on the mind. People and dragons can link minds for greater mental power. Brom even says in Book 1, a wizard's duel is less about who wields more magic and more about who can outsmart the other. Think of an angle of attack that the other hasn't considered. The telepathy angle really allows for some excellent character work too. Remember, when two characters fight, you never want the contest to come down to simply who's better at fighting, because that's kind of boring. What you really want is for it to be about the characters themselves, their journeys and their decisions. So using mental magic is a great way to incorporate character work into your magic and into the action itself. The second unique part of the world is the languages, because they're so extensive. Christopher went well and truly overboard when doing the whole fictional language thing, constructing them out of Old Norse, Old English, German, and Russian. Now yes, there are times it goes on for far too long, but it also gives an incredible level of depth and realism to the world. Language is a lot weirder than most people realize. It changes so much between peoples and cultures, and yet also blends with other languages too. So Christopher truly did accomplish something marvelous in making each language unique and distinct from each other. Now you may doubt me here. You may think, oh look, the languages weren't that clever. Well, guess what? I'm about to blow your mind. Eragon itself is a name constructed out of old languages, but it's also just the word dragon with one letter changed. Like, yeah, it was staring us in the face this whole time. One letter changed. It's even the next letter alphabetically. It's just D went to an E. And it's so simple, and we never realized it because we don't pronounce them the same. It's Eragon, not Eragon, right? As far as fantasy names go, it's just brilliant, and it's kind of infuriating. So yeah, his language skills were pretty good. Let's talk about a few other things that Inheritance does very well. There were many times in rereading this series where I was very surprised at the maturity involved here on so many issues. First is the Urgals. In Book 1, they are nothing more than a race of monsters. They're the evil race, like the orcs in Lord of the Rings. But from Book 2 onwards, Christopher seemed to realize that writing off an entire group of people as being the evil race is more than a little problematic. It's a whole topic of discussion within fantasy that evil races are a form of benign racism. For example, the orcs in Lord of the Rings don't have villages or homes with wives and children. They don't have culture or art or higher education or civilization. No, they're just animals. Should we negotiate with orcs? Should we send ambassadors to start diplomatic proceedings? Should we let them immigrate into our country? No, of course not. No, we should probably wipe them from the face of the earth, right? This is what Christopher realized is the message that he was putting down in Book 1. And so he made significant effort to humanize Urgals in all books going forward. He gave them culture, tribes, and a system of honor. He gave us Urgal characters who actually have hopes and dreams and motivations. While he never downplayed retroactively the violent acts that they did in Book 1, he also showed that they were just like humans, capable of good and evil. This requires surprising maturity from a teenage author, as, let's face it, older people aren't willing to accept this perspective regarding fantasy races. A second mature theme is the love story between Eragon and Princess Arya. Now, I'm going to be honest and a bit vulnerable here. When I first read Eragon as a teenage boy, I hated Arya. I thought she was stuck up and rude and cold-hearted. I hated that she kept rejecting Eragon and his affections over and over and over again. Yet when I read it as an adult, I was amazed at how mature this plotline really is. Stories often end with the hero getting the girl at the end. It leaves us feeling almost entitled to it. Eragon wants Arya, therefore he gets Arya, right? Well, no. Eragon's journey is all about accepting that just because he cares for a woman, she can still reject him, because she is her own person and she belongs to no man. We even see how over time Eragon's idolization of her matures into a deep respect for her individualism and an appreciation for her friendship. This plotline is almost like Feminism 101 for young boys, showing them that they don't get the girl just because they want her, and teaching that it's actually better to treat women with respect. We see the joys of Eragon's friendship with Arya later, once they learn to see each other as equals and as friends. There's none of these complaints about the friend zone here, and I have great respect for Christopher for showing that and introducing that to young male readers. The third mature theme here is the depiction of war and conflict. Many action-heavy fantasy series will make fighting a comical, light-hearted, fun thing. It's rare to see a fantasy series, let alone a young adult series, kinda, that actually depicts war and conflict as an evil thing, even if it's a necessary evil at times. This series shows that by how it explores magic. So magic is shown to have an innate connection with life and nature. Eragon can sense the energy in ants, in trees, and the world around him, and he learns to value all life. He even becomes a vegetarian over the course of the series because of how much he learns to respect all life. This really balances out the horrors of war, and even enhances that horror. Eragon learns the value of life, and when he must take life, he feels that loss deeply. It's something that you may not expect a teenage author to comprehend, let alone offer commentary on. Sometimes when we read books from 20 plus years ago, it can feel like Christmas at the family's with your low-key racist uncle. Or perhaps not so low-key. Well, that is not the case with Eragon. This series has aged like fine wine in this area. As mentioned earlier, it does a great job of confronting stereotypes regarding race. Christopher takes the time to establish that every race is filled with people capable of both good and evil, and gives us characters from that race. He humanizes them, even the scary-looking ones. More than that, this series is surprisingly female. I couldn't believe this on my reread, but for point-of-view characters, we have male Eragon and Roran, and for female we have Nassuada, Arya, and Saphira. It's pretty well balanced, and he legit does a good job of writing women. Nassuada in particular stood out on my reread. She is kind of amazing. She's a hard-as-nails ice queen, bound to her duty. Nassuada can be very tough, even on her allies, even coming into conflict with Eragon and Roran at times when they get too reckless. She tells them to pull their head in and work with the team, and she demands respect and obedience in her quest to keep the rebellion together. I love this. So often we only see women in stories who are nice and kind and inoffensive. Nassuada is allowed to be annoying to the other characters at times because she believes she's doing the right thing. Okay, that's enough about the old stuff. Let's look at the new stuff. It's been 1 year since the end of the Eragon era. Murtagh and his dragon Thorn are outcast from society, living outside of civilization and doing their best to heal their wounds from their past lives. Each of them deal with their own trauma and inner demons, finding comfort in each other. Murtagh travels the world looking for signs of the old empire, using his unique power to challenge threats both magical and mundane. Maybe if he can help enough people, he can earn redemption for his past actions. Yet, new threats are emerging. New mysteries have appeared regarding the fall of the Dragon Riders and the rise of Galbatorix 100 years ago. At the center of this mystery stands a witch and her commune, building a new country off the bones of the old. Murtagh might be the perfect man to combat this new threat. In fact, he might be the only one capable of standing against it. The first thing you should know, Murtagh the novel is truly a standalone. This is not the start of a new series, but it's also a hint of things to come. There are new things about Alagaësia itself that are hinted at in this book, but not revealed by the end. To be specific, there is a note from the author at the back of the book, where he states that he always intended to write Eragon Book 5. But Murtagh is not that novel. Well, personally, I am very hopeful that we will eventually get Eragon Era 1 and Eragon Era 2 with Murtagh as the bridge between in the middle. As it stands right now, there is no official word and Murtagh is just a standalone. It's also a rather unusual novel. Murtagh is split into 6 parts, and each part is quite standalone, almost like a 6-novella collection, each one dealing with its own mini-adventure. Murtagh travels from place to place dealing with challenges great and small, and all of these little parts of the story are linked together by the character journey of Murtagh and Thorn. Still, you're probably wondering in simple terms, is Murtagh any good? In a word, yes. It is a good novel. In fact, it's the highest rated novel on Goodreads out of the whole series. It is also a fair bit darker in nature. Murtagh had a childhood full of abuse and grief, and he envies Eragon for the life that he had the chance to live. Murtagh sees some fresh suffering in this book too. A content warning, there is a bit of torture and deprivation in this book.
You're gonna have a bad time.
Yet the story also fills in some gaps from the wider series. Christopher always said that Inheritance was meant to be the story of three brothers, or kind of brothers, Eragon, Roran, and Murtagh. However, because of the way the story worked out, Murtagh never got the screen time that Christopher wanted to give him. So in many ways, this book is kind of addressing that gap. Also, there's only a small amount of fan service here. There is some reminiscing and some minor updates on what the other characters are up to now, but for the most part we do not go and just revisit all the old characters and the old locations and retrace our steps. This is very much a new story. That said, I did have one issue with this book, and I feel like I need to give you warning of it. Murtagh spends a lot of time facing off against this witch. As soon as she's introduced, I know, okay, it's going to come down to a magical battle between the two of them. It's a Chekhov's gun situation. We know it's coming, but they spend so much time in the book just trying to trick each other, playing politics and word games and spying and dancing around the subject. Now, the actual contest between them is not bad, it's kind of interesting, but I did feel like it was quite frustrating because I was like, just get to the confrontation already, you know you're just gonna have to fight to the death, just do that part already.
The eating of an orange is a lot like a good marriage. Just eat the damn oranges!
Okay, apparently I just needed to get that off my chest. Besides that, it's also very clear how much Christopher Paolini has grown as an author over the last 20 years. Murtagh is a professional novel by a talented and skilled writer working at the top of their game. In many ways, it's hugely gratifying just to see what he's capable of doing now with a few years of practice under his belt. That said, Paolini has written two other novels, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars and a shorter prequel novel, Fractal Noise, and these are part of the Fractal verse. Many people lauded these books as proof of his new writing abilities. Now, I haven't read these two books yet. Let me know if you have, and let me know if you would like to see a review on them. Well, despite searching all across the internet, I could not find any official news about new Alagaësian books, only rumours, and that one note at the end of Murtagh where the author says he has rough plans to write more. That said, there is talk that Paolini is working on a TV show adaptation of Eragon, because I have successfully avoided talking about that god-awful movie version that we're all just going to pretend doesn't exist now. I would be very interested in seeing a TV show, just as long as they don't try to make it into yet another Game of Thrones copycat. But that's all the official news we have so far. Now for the real final question. Look, I would say yes, absolutely, they are still worth reading. For some of you. And maybe worth revisiting for some of us who haven't touched these books in over a decade and maybe still have strong opinions about them based off our memories from 10 years ago. Maybe it's time to give this another shot and see how you feel about them now, as an older and hopefully wiser person. The Eragon series can be very generic at times, but it's also a near-perfect entry point into the fantasy genre. It is so easy to get into. Yes, it's derivative of other stories, but that will also mean it will feel familiar even when it's new, helping new readers adjust. Besides, some of you might still think it's a lot better than Fourth Wing. You know what? Let's not go there. Yet, if you have reached a point where you have grown beyond these books, may I just remind you of something? I think many of us owe our love of fantasy to Christopher Paolini and Eragon to some respect. Many of us started as that boy on the farm, whisked away by the fantasy genre into whole new worlds, until one day, like Eragon, we grew too old to enjoy the old world anymore. Somehow, Alagaësia didn't suit us any longer. We've grown up. And so we leave that world behind and move on to new journeys. There is a certain bitterness to growing up, leaving the past behind and knowing you can never go back. Those old stories won't make you feel the way you did long ago. But I think it's important to hold the past in high respect. Be thankful to your past self for the journeys you went on if it brought you to where you are today. And who knows, maybe one day you will find yourself back in Alagaësia, filled with childlike wonder, ready to ride on the backs of dragons once more. Till that day, if you see someone else younger than you on their own reading journey, picking up Eragon for the first time, I hope you'll find it in yourself to simply wish them luck. Encourage them as they learn to fly, and bid them, Se honor sveda dija chavas. May your swords stay sharp. Thank you for watching. Now, I have some exciting news. This September, I'm once again doing monthly themes. I'm so excited to be getting back to monthly themes. I'm going to be doing a whole month of indie books, self-published books, just like Eragon, by indie authors who deserve more attention. And I'm starting with me. My own books are coming to Kickstarter next month, and so my next video will be a book review on my own books. That's going to be weird, but I'll figure it out. The rest of the month will be other indie authors you haven't heard of yet, but you will love. Then in October, I'm going to be looking at books by other YouTubers. Turns out there are a bunch of other YouTubers who are writing some really good books, and yes, it's a bit like me. So we'll be back with weekly videos for the next 2 months with a ton of new book recommendations. I'm very excited. If you learned something in this video, please consider supporting my work. You can comment and subscribe for free, or you can go the extra step and check out my online shop, Rainbow Space Unicorn, where you can buy shirts like this one, You Are Never Too Old for Dragons. You can also check out my Patreon. Please also check out my book launch in coming weeks. There's a link to the Kickstarter launch page in the description below. Okay, that's all. I hope you've enjoyed reminiscing about Eragon with me, and I hope you enjoy whatever you choose to read. I'll see you next time. Bye!